What's your go-to scary story to tell around a campfire?
I went to a canoe tripping camp, canoe camping, in northern Canada while I was growing up. When I was there, the camp was already 102 years old. In the early years of the camp, they had First Nation, Cree and Ojibwe, guides on the trips. And in the early 1910, they had a very popular and good guide, who had just gotten married. He moved his wife out to a remote island on one of the lakes and built a cabin with her out there. There were a few other cabins on the lake, but it was quite remote but on a fur trading route. They had a happy first winter there, but he was gone all summer guiding canoe trips, and during the fall and spring he would be gone for weeks at a time trapping animals for furs, only coming home to the remote cabin to get different clothes and drop off supplies to his young wife. One trip early in the fall he came home to drop off supplies, and his wife had lost her mind, and she killed him by chopping him in the head with an axe. They found her screaming, stark mad, and naked on the shore of their island. She was committed and died shortly afterwards. She never recovered her mind. In late 1990, in the early fall, a husband and wife were canoe tripping down that same lake and were caught in a terrible storm. They took shelter on the island. They tried to set up their tent, but it was torn away by the wind. The guide's cabin still stood. The years had blown out the windows and collapsed part of the roof, but it was shelter enough from the storm. They hunkered down there that day and into the night as the storm raged on. The next morning the wife was found naked and screaming for help, adrift in their canoe on the lake. The waters were still rough from the storm the day before and she was inconsolable. She claimed a native man with half a head tore her clothes from her as she slept, and that she was chased by a naked corpse of a woman into the night until she escaped in their canoe. She didn't know where her husband was. They found his body in the ruins of the cabin, with half his head missing. They never solved the murder.
A young woman moves into a new apartment and adopts a dog, named Max, so that she feels safe and comfortable living alone. They become best friends and always sleep and cuddle in bed together every night. Well, one night before bed, it's dark, and she keeps hearing weird noises from other parts of the apartment. Max jumps off her bed to investigate, but the woman just brushes it off like it must be the neighbors in another apartment or the wind outside making noise, and starts to drift off to sleep. She wakes in the middle of the night and notices Max isn't sleeping next to her, but she hears a creaking noise under her bed, so she places her hand down beside it and calls out, "Max? What you doing, buddy?" She immediately is comforted by the feeling her dog licking her hand, and she slowly falls back to sleep. Upon waking up, she heads to the bathroom to take a shower, where she sees her dog hanging and murdered in the shower. On the mirror, written in blood, it says humans can lick too.
Ooh, gotta be the one about the hiker who gets lost in the bush one night and stumbles upon an old cabin. He finds the door open, and shines his flashlight in. In the flickering light he sees an old bed covered in yellow newspaper, as well as these odd portraits on the wall. All of strange sizes and angles, each depicting people who just seem off. He settles down on the uncomfortable bed and shuts his eyes to those unnerving portraits. In the morning, with the sun shining into the cabin, he realizes something horrible. Those portraits were windows.
An elderly man was sitting alone on a dark path. He wasn't sure of which direction to go, and he'd forgotten both where he was traveling to and who he was. He remembered absolutely nothing. He suddenly looked up to see an elderly woman before him. She grinned toothlessly and with a cackle, spoke, "Now your third wish." "What will it be?" "Third wish." The man was baffled. "How can it be a third wish if I haven't had a first and second wish?" "You've had 2 wishes already," the hag said, "but your second wish was for you to forget everything you know." She cackled at the poor man. "So it is that you have 1 wish left." "All right," he said hesitantly, "I don't believe this, but there's no harm in trying. I wish to know who I truly am." "Funny," said the old woman as she granted his wish and disappeared forever. "That was your first wish."
I lived in an old apartment building when I was in my 20s in New York. One night I was heading to a party at like 2 in the morning and heading down the elevator, it stopped on the way down. This building was 16 floors, so it took a minute or two for the old elevator to get down and it was always pretty shaky. Anyway, a few floors down, the doors opened and there was a couple standing there. They looked at me and I looked at them. They didn't move. I said, "Are you getting in?" And they said they'd take the next one. I just assumed they wanted to be alone. But right when the doors closed, I heard the woman say, "Why are there so many people on the elevator at this time of night?"
My dad was house shopping and one time my sister and I came along to look at this house. It seemed like most of the bedrooms were in the basement of the house, which was where we spent most of our time looking. Some of the doors had holes at the bottom like someone had kicked them, or scratch marks all over. The whole place had an Amityville horror vibe. My sister and I joked that the place was totally haunted. When we left, we noticed the wooden railing on the front deck, and saw the words, "By Haunted Who's" in childlike writing. It's unclear if it meant, "by haunted house," or "by haunted house," but we chose to say "by."
Hated year 4 camp because my friend on the bus ride there told me this story. There was once a family with a mother, father and son. They lived in a street called Slide Street. One week the parents decide to go on a trip without the boy. Before leaving, the father tells the son, "If you hear the noises, click, clock, slide, turn off all the lights, lock all the doors, and stay completely silent. That's all you need to know for the rest of the week." The son thinks nothing of it, and for some reason the parents of the street leave for something as well. The first night the son is reading comics and watching TV when he faintly hears click, clock, slide. He remembers what his dad said and locks doors, turns off the lights and is silent. He falls asleep and wakes up the next morning completely fine. He looks outside and sees no one, weirdly, since it was 11 a.m., but he doesn't think much of it. He then safeguards the house and does the procedures early, but he never hears anything for the next 2 nights. On the 4th night he thinks maybe it was just a one-off thing. He doesn't pre-set up the house until he hears click, clock, slide. But this time it's as if it's coming from the driveway. So he does everything but the lights and accidentally leaves some on, but he makes it through the night. He pre-sets up the house 2 more times but doesn't for the last night when his parents are meant to be back, but they don't come that night, and then he hears click, clock, slide. But this time it seems as if it's at their front door, so he just runs to his room. He does nothing until he looks in the hallway. He sees a woman with no legs on her arms, then realizes why those sounds were being. It was from her long nails digging into the ground, then her cracking her knuckles and finally sliding. Then he realizes why no one else came outside their homes, because they were already dead. He tries to run but can't. He's paralyzed from fear. The woman drags herself toward him and carves out his heart. The parents knew that someone had to die in every house in the street, so that they weren't all hunted down.
My third-year elementary teacher told. Around the 80s, about 10 students in her class were playing outside in winter. As it was a usual cold day, they decided to start some fire by getting woods. As no one had ever started campfire before, the fire seemed too small and cold. So one of them decided to put some gasoline there. He got a bottle of gasoline, and as he poured it there, the fire blasted to a student opposite. His whole body had burnt.
This one is actually true, and I still experience it today. I live in the middle of nowhere, and my closest neighbors are a quarter mile away, and when I'm home alone I hear a car door slam, yet when I look outside, nobody is there. It happens all the time, and I never know if someone is spying on me, or something, because it sounds like it is right outside.
A woman's husband died in a car crash. A few years later, the woman was walking home from work. She had very frequent hallucinations. She saw a black figure zoom to the house and thought it was nothing. She was dragged inside the house once she got there, and then I grabbed one of the people with me.
Thanks for watching. If you have any stories you want to share, please write them in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on more videos like this.